When you think of Dodge Chargers, there are two that may come to mind, okay? There's the 1968 to 1970 model, which would we say here? 1968 Dodge Charger. This is the older one that most people probably know of for one reason or another, right? You know, movies, TV shows, they love this thing, right? And then there's the other one, the modern day Dodge Charger. Let's just say 2015 Dodge Charger, right? These are the two that people think of, that come to mind, right? The modern four-door or the classic muscle car. But what if, oh, that's weird. What if I told you that there were 3, possibly 4, depending on your knowledge, other Chargers that you most likely have never heard of, let alone seen? Because there were some less than popular styles of Charger. All right. So let's get things started. Let's see. Let's just go to Wikipedia. Get the ball rolling, right? Dodge Charger. Now, believe it or not, unlike with a lot of cars, the first generation of the Charger is one of the least popular. Okay, most people might think, oh yeah, it's the old looking one, something like this. You're wrong. It's actually, the first Charger was actually in 1966. This is what the first generation of Dodge Charger looks like, okay? 1966 Dodge Charger. If you take a look at a picture like this, you might look at this and it might remind you of a much more popular car. 1960, let's go with 67 Ford Mustang Fastback, right? If you take a look at this bad boy, you might recognize that that fastback shape, right? That the Mustang popularized. The slant, you know, it's not the slant, the curve to the tail, right? The curve to the tail end. This was on purpose, believe it or not. The Mustang came out a few years before the Charger, with the fastback, and people loved it. This is one of the most popular, well-known muscle cars of all time, and it even was back in the day. So Dodge took note of that, and they created their Charger, except this one was much bigger. But other than that, very much designed, inspired by the Mustang, understandably so. You know, even if you take a look at the front grille, you might think, huh, I feel like I might have seen that somewhere. Well, that's because you have seen something very similar. Let's just take a look at, let's say, the 1968 Mercury Cougar. Very reminiscent front grille. The vertical. I don't know. Look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if it has a technical term or what, but the vertical slits in the grille, very, very similar. As with, you know, a lot of industry and things in the world, people like to copy each other's designs as much as they can, and you can kind of see that with the first Charger. Why didn't this thing become popular, right? Just like the cars that it came from. You can probably see something about it just kind of looks a little off comparatively. It looks taller. It looks off. It was longer. It was bigger. Had bigger overhangs in front of and behind the wheels. It wasn't very popular. Everybody wanted the other cars that it was inspired by, for one reason or another. Power-wise, pretty standard. It wasn't super special in terms of power or performance, so it was kind of just another option you could go for. And with how popular the other cars at the time were, it just faded away. Let's get some data here. Automobile catalog, that sounds official. Model year 1966, two-door hardtop, 37,300 units. 67, 15,788 units. So you can see wasn't very popular. At least not relatively to how other cars were selling at the time. And yeah, just it's kind of unorthodox design. You know, it's kind of hard to put your finger on. Maybe it's the giant window going so far behind the door, or who knows. But something about it just felt off, and to a lot of people it still does. You know, if you get the right one, it's not too bad. You can kind of see how it inspired the later generations of Charger and Super Bee and stuff like that. So, you know, it was very inspirational, but didn't really take off anywhere. So where did it go from here, right? Well, then it became the second generation, which is, you know, the popular older style of Dodge Charger. At the time, the second generation was definitely much more of a success, but it was still kind of, it wasn't super special for any particular reason. However, they did use it to eventually attempt stock car racing, which kind of gave it its own side quest with the Charger Daytona. Originally, with the stock Charger, it wasn't great at the stock car track. You know, it did its best, but they had to make some improvements. So they gave it this giant nose cone and the rear wing, a couple performance things here and there, and made it much more of a better race car. Kind of cool, but I'm not going to get too far into it because technically it's kind of its own model. But you can see the original in there, just very similar but different. The original was still kind of a powerhouse. You know, it was nothing crazy, but it was much more popular. Model year 1969, 20,000 units. Oh, that's the RTVA. It's the and the total production. I should read better. Let's see. Model year 1969 Charger V8, 68,600 units. Much more, you know, more than double the first gen Charger. Much more of a success. Still wasn't as popular as things such as the Mustang or anything like that at the time, but definitely a huge improvement. 1970, I don't know why the 68 isn't on here, but that's okay. 1970 Dodge Charger V8, almost 50,000 units. So you can kind of see the trend going down, but hey, still much more of a success than its predecessor was. And you can definitely see that with how popular the Chargers become this generation. In the 70s, there was the Dukes of Hazzard, which definitely first put a spotlight on the car, and then late 90s, you had Fast and the Furious. Yeah, most people who may know this car would probably knows it with the giant supercharger sticking out of the hood, all blacked out, all that. Maybe the off-road one in that one, 7, I think. Definitely popularized it a ton. These things skyrocketed in value because of it. Hugely popular, the 70s specifically. You know, people see the potential in it nowadays, and it's become a staple of American muscle. So that's one of the two super popular styles that most people know of. However, if you were paying attention, you'll probably recognize that there's a bit of a gap between the 1970 and late 2000s Chargers that people know. So what happened between here and there? Well, let me show you, because you almost certainly don't know about it already. This was the third generation of Charger, okay? It was definitely a bit different, especially nowadays. A lot of people look at the difference between the second gen and the third gen and think, wow, they ruined it. But at the time, this one kind of fit in with how a lot of styles were changing, and with the differences in it says it right here, the emissions and safety regulations. Things were changing, and so the new Charger was designed to kind of reflect that. Definitely less popular than the previous generation, as I'm going over right now. Definitely forgotten to an extent. You know, some people who are kind of into cars may know about it simply because they know about the more popular second gen, and they're like, I wonder what happened to that, and then they see it turned into that. So like as you can see here, model year 1971 Dodge Charger, total production 46,000. That's the total production. So compared to the previous gen where it was double in 1 year alone, probably not the best, but at the time it was kind of just another option. Definitely nothing super crazy. It had pretty decent horsepower if you had the right engine option, but that's not what it was advertised for. 70s definitely became, it was the time where things were starting to kind of ramp down, and it reflects in the numbers. 1971, two-door hardtop, 11,000, almost 12,000 units. 1972, 7,000 units, two-door hardtop, 45,000 units. And you may look at it and you might be able to tell why. It was definitely a relatively drastic change from the previous generation. Kept the split grille, but that's kind of about it. It was a bit shorter lengthwise. They did this weird thing that you can kind of see where it's just the opposing angles, whereas before you had the rear window go kind of back and then up to the roof. This one they just went straight from the door to the roof with that window there, and it's just off-putting, the angle change. It's even hard to find a bunch of pictures without other generations coming up. Oh, that's a spoiler. Yeah, you can kind of see how it's, at the time it kind of fit in with the 70s styles, but nowadays it's not sought after, and it is what it is. It's been kind of forgotten by time. Not many people talk about this thing anymore. Now this next one, the fourth generation, is the entire point I thought of for making this breakdown, this video, because I had never even, I didn't know they made these. It was only available for a couple of years, and you'll see why. I found this and I didn't know what I was looking at. This is the fourth generation, and I would be very surprised if you guys knew about this either. Even the Wikipedia article is barely it's barely 3 sentences long. This is the 1975 to 1978 Dodge Charger, fourth generation. Can you see why nobody talks about this thing? It definitely took a lot of the cues from Lincoln, maybe a little Cadillac, and that's because they were trying to make the Charger into more of a personal luxury car, as it says here. You know, it's got the vinyl up top, which the Chargers had in the past. You saw some examples. Vinyl wasn't completely unheard of, but just the way it's in the rear portion of the roof, definitely reminiscent of some of the old luxury cars of the same era. They made it long, they made it boxy, just like the Lincolns and the Cadillacs and a lot of the 70s luxury cars. Definitely wasn't built for sport or that power like some of the last generations were. When you look at it really quick, it almost even looks like a Monte Carlo, a Chevy Monte Carlo, which when you put it in that perspective, you know, get rid of the vinyl, Maybe give it some race tires like this. It kind of perks up a bit. You can see it, but it was, as you can see, wow, they really don't have many pictures of it, do they? Nobody talks about this one. Most people don't know about it. I didn't know about it. And that's kind of all there is to say about it. Nothing crazy under the hood. Like I said, it was supposed to be more of a luxury car. They were trying to change up that market. However, they did make a 4th gen Dodge Charger Daytona. Remember that spin-off from the 2nd generation? Well, they made a Daytona 4th gen, and it's doesn't really look all that different. With it being kind of the race version, its specs were a bit better, but mostly looks wise, which, as you can tell, probably is what I'm talking about most of the time, because it's the best part of the car is how it looks. Any car can get you someplace, but it depends how you look doing it. But that's its own tangent. Wow, they really don't like showing this thing off. But yeah, with the Daytona, they kind of get rid of the vinyl, maybe make it sit a bit differently, but it wasn't anything crazy. Like I said, very reminiscent of a Monte Carlo at the time. The regular version, more of a Lincoln, more of a Cadillac with the vinyl. I keep repeating myself because there's really not much to say. Let's go to the sales numbers just so I can prove that point. Model year 1975 to 1978. Total sales in 1975, 30,000 units. 1977, 2-door hardtop coupe, 36,000 units. 1978 dropped all the way down to 2,000 units. It dropped off. Nobody really cared for them. Nobody really wanted them. There were better options for luxury. There were better options for sport and muscle. And the Charger kind of just went away for a bit. And you can see why. It got to the point where they replaced this Charger with something called the Dodge Magnum. This is the Dodge Magnum, and you can see how they just took the notes of the 4th gen Charger and made it into something a bit different. Not by much, but a bit. They changed up the front end, and they called it the Dodge Magnum. And this is another car that has been forgotten by time, but nevertheless, it finished off the Charger for a bit. So this is my pick for the least known Charger. I had never heard of it. I had never seen it. And when I found out that the name existed, I certainly didn't expect the 75 to look like this. But now you see why they went away and why no one talks about it. Until the 5th generation, right? Nope, no one talks about this either. Mostly because, if I had to guess, it looks strikingly similar, once again, to the Mustangs of the same era. The Fox body and regular Mustangs in the 80s looked very similar to this Charger. There it is, and it's 80s glory Dodge Charger, right? Very much 80s, and you can kind of see some of the inspiration, because if you take a look at the, let's say, 1985 Ford Mustang, this is the Ford Mustang of the time. Can you see the resemblance? Just the shape, as you can see, very similar. Just the way that the front comes to a point. It's got that boxy roof. So once again, just trying to take some of that success from the Mustang, which came first in this generation once again. However, also like the Mustang at this time, performance on some trim levels of the Charger of the time were pretty all right. Just like the Mustangs, some of them were pretty quick, and that was kind of the only reason you might think about these. Kind of like the Mustangs a little bit, depending on your feelings on those. But the power numbers weren't too bad, mostly because of how much smaller the car got. It was pretty. The engines weren't necessarily anything crazy for the time. It's just the fact that it got much smaller, much lighter. Let's see, 1983, Dodge Charger two-door hatchback, 22,000 units. So definitely could have been worse. Definitely could have been a lot better though. Two-door hatchback 1984, 34,000, kind of went up a bit. 1985, two-door hatchback, 38,000, kind of staying around just a little bit. 86, two-door hatchback, 38,000 once again. 97, 24,000, starting to kind of dip down. Dodge could see this wasn't exactly one of their best sellers at the time. And yeah, that's essentially it for the 5th gen. They did make a Shelby edition, but that was essentially nothing too different, you know, just like the Daytona, just a bit quicker, but the looks were mostly the same. And yeah, at this point it's kind of fallen into obscurity, but that was the 5th gen. And then after that we get back into the familiar territory with the 6th gen. As you can see, starting at the style we know today, the 4-door sedan Dodge Charger. These things are everywhere now. The popularity of the Charger has come back in droves. These things are everywhere. People love these modern Chargers. They started being used in police work as well. So even if you don't care about cars per se, you've probably seen something like this around with the police cars using the Charger nowadays. But yeah, as you can see, they definitely made it a bit more modern, made it a bit more sleek, as this was the early 2000s. You know, the old muscle car styles weren't exactly around the same way anymore. And one of the bigger things is that they gave it 4 doors, of course, as you can see. Made it into a sedan rather than how most of the time it's been a coupe. Some people do stuff like this, but some people like it more than the old style, and they're wrong. I don't hate it for a modern car, but they gave it the 4-door treatment, made it kind of a average sedan, nothing too crazy out of the blue. Dodge around the time, of course, kind of changing up some of their style. A lot of cars this day had the, I don't know what you'd call it, but the 4 quadrants grill, the cross grill, I don't know, but that was everywhere, so they slapped that on here. They had a lot of different trim levels as well, which is one of the bigger things that it's known for today, is that these things started to have a bunch of power for just a 4-door sedan. You know, it wasn't necessarily marketed as anything too crazy at first, but they have some crazy trim levels. For example, yeah, the 2010 had a 6.1 liter Hemi V8 with 425 horsepower, which not only at the time for a sort of average car otherwise was kind of nuts. So these things started to get super popular, whether it's for the police work or for the crazy performance packages. So let's get some actual numbers in here. 6th gen Dodge Charger sales numbers. This is not what I asked. This is a Dodge Polara. What is this? Goodcar.badcar.net. That sounds kind of funny, but let's see. Oh, whoa. This is an awesome website. Huh. Okay. Well, this is awesome. So, as you can see, 2005, 44,000. 2006, people started seeing how the potential, how awesome these things were, and 114,000, the next year 119,000, These things just kept getting sold. These things became super popular because of the added practicality of it being a sedan rather than a coupe, as well as for the people who want it, the power performance packages. This thing became huge, which it's not difficult to see why. And then it became the current well, I guess not current anymore technically because they revealed the next one, but the last generation, 7th generation, 2011 to 2023, with the Dodge Charger for that time. Very similar. Dodge saw that, wow, these things sell. That's a first in a while, and so they kept around the general style. They updated it a little bit, made it a bit more sleek, some more indents and contours here and there, but it's you can still see the inspiration behind it. Yeah, very reminiscent of the previous generation, but they updated it just a bit. Made it, gave it a couple more lines here and there. It's its own thing, for sure. Some people still do stuff like this, so there's that. But yeah, definitely a popular one. One of the bigger driving factors this time around, though, is the power. They made all kinds of trim levels, Hellcats and Scat Packs and all kinds of stuff for this new Charger. So let's get my point across with those power numbers. 7th gen Dodge Charger, highest horsepower. As reflected here, the 2023, the last year of this generation, Hellcat Red Eye Jailbreak, features a 6.2 liter supercharged high output V8 engine capable of over 800 horsepower. Power and speed definitely started to become part of its brand. It was certainly going back to some of its old roots, trying to focus on speed and power, and people love it for that. These things are everywhere, and like you can see in these numbers, this generation started 2011, and you can see the uptick of people wanting more and more of them as they started to get more and more crazy with the performance. 70,000 in 2011, almost 90,000 sales in 2012, almost 100,000 in 2013, and then it hovered around 95 for a few years. And people like these things, and it's not hard to see why. It's got the practicality and the performance, and yeah, that is kind of where we are in the Dodge Charger line. But they did just reveal the next gen, the 8th gen, and it's supposedly going to look something like this. You know, there's not much to say about it yet, obviously. It's not even out yet, but time will tell if this is a sought-after beast. If you really want to get unique, I suppose, there are a couple of concept chargers we can take a look at. For example, I just found out about this recently as well, the 1999 Dodge Charger concept car, which looks like a Dodge Stealth. As you can see, they were thinking about making 4-door Chargers a bit earlier than they actually did it, and it's definitely unique. With a lot of concept cars, it seems like they kind of just try to go overly futuristic with the curves and all kinds of stuff like that. It's definitely a unique concept. And like I said, you know, it's a concept, so there's not much to say about it. And that's kind of all there is to it. And if you really want to get eclectic, is that the right word? I don't know. If you really want to get unknown, we can go to the 1964 Dodge Concept 2. Dodge Charger Concept 2. This one's hard to remember simply because of how old it is at this point, but it was definitely unique, as you can see. You can kind of see some of the inspirations, you know, at the time at least. It almost looks like just an early Ford Ranchero or something like that. Ford Ranchero. Okay, well, not that early. 1960s Ford Ranchero. Yeah, you can kind of see that, a little bit of that inspiration, the kind of blocky nature of it, and that's kind of all there's to say about that as well. That was a very kind of basic crash course of the Dodge Chargers and how the fourth generation is just completely and utterly forgotten. And this is my pick for the most unknown Dodge Charger. But what do you think? The fifth gen is also pretty damn gone.